Go for it.
All right. So I'm a poet and a writer, and I've written poetry for the most part. And in this book, I've attempted to bridge the gap between poetry and prose. But I'll start from my voice, and then I'll start reading from a book I just published within Pepper Press called The Frightened. And I guess I want you to see what I wrote like before, because I feel like my writing drastically changed. And part of what was so difficult about writing this book was accepting that new voice. So I'll just start with something from my website. So I'll be reading a poem right now called The Night is an Old Friend. Nights like those were seldom at my age. As I strolled along the coast of Tegalbesa, the black sand sliding off my feet as if coated with marble, I thought, somewhere in my infirmity and disbelief, I must have forgotten the comfort of beauty. So I sat on the cold beach sand on a spot where the moon left a generous light as it fiddled with the tides, and for a moment I could stand to be senile. Peaceful, you chose the best spot, cried a voice, her presence as disturbing as a scream. She sat beside me, her golden legs stretched out on the sand, and there were not yet any formal introductions. Instead, she flipped her sun-like hair onto one shoulder, unveiling a face with lips the color of blackberry, eyes shining. She looked good in the moonlight. My name is Esme, and you are? Walter, I replied, a little more at ease. She had the tranquility of old age, a respect for silence, as she sat beside me then, only half a man. But these youths were too quick to trust an old face, and had I gathered the strength to have my way with her, the ocean would have drowned the sound of her resistance. But who was I kidding? Lately, the pecker hardly rises to the occasion, and though life had made a soldier of my body, I remained gentle at heart. I was never hardened by the war, nor could I rise past the ranks of a cadet. I was simply gifted with rhetoric and the face of a trustworthy man. A gift I used to burn through my youth and squander my old age. Though at the moment, I suppose, all she saw was a burn with insatiable desire. Walter, she said softly, and in her kind attempt to break the silence, she says, I didn't sit here because it was peaceful. I sat here because you were. I laugh and tell her peace was something imposed on me, which I protested with all my youth. She was now intrigued, but I was not all that surprised. The ego was so easily persuaded by words. In her curiosity, she'd asked if I'd had any children. I told her none that I know of. See, I've never remained in one place long enough to see its deterioration. Though I've often wondered why strange subjects like her never found me in my prime. Perhaps they sat on coastlines under the moonlight in solitude, while I was out chasing the wind. Still, her ripe, vibrant hand befriended my cold, flaking fist. She had the heart to make an old man happy, even if only for a moment. And I, 79 years old then, had butterflies in my stomach. It's called Brands of. Okay, here it is. Brands of love. I have seen the way men look at me. For a moment, it's as if they are found, like they found something rare and gentle, like I were their only hope. But what I love is the grip of their hands around my neck. I love it when I'm overpowered, when I feel as though I have no choice, and I'm moaning, and they won't stop. I wonder what it would take for him to hear me, Must I bite my ears and scratch him? Must I bite his ears and scratch him? Must I scream with my voice that won't carry until I finally have the guts not to speak? It's taken a while for me to arrive at this, to admit that I'm so willing to be destroyed. It contradicts my posture and my love of literature. Though I may marvel at a twig in a stream or take precaution with my skirt through a breeze, there is no grace in my desire. There is no art in how I love. So before you fix your burning eyes on me, or imagine my body bathed in milk, understand that I am not a gentle thing. I am intense and vulgar. I rolled in the mud as a child and I was forced to take a shower. And it doesn't take much to know a person. A small effort would be enough. And it's not fair to ask to be understood by someone you've never tried to understand. Men do this all the time when they think that you are beautiful. They see all sorts of things, even the future, but not you. Um, so I'll just read something now from. It's written as a combination of like prose poetry pieces, but they come together to make one novella. And so I'm just going to read different sections from different paragraphs, different chapters, just so that I don't ruin the story for you, but also so that you get a sense of what the story is like. I'll start with a chapter called The Body. Sorry, I'll start with the chapter called The Web of Lies. I've spun a web of lies. The first, I think, was to catch a fly, to cling to his ends as he took flight, like all men of might who aren't weighed down by things which weigh. I saw him shake the hand of the president. I saw him grow a beard, carve a mustache. I saw him hold a job, a driver's license. I tried to reach for him up there. My fear, I think, was to be earthbound, to be solemn, to be below when everything was above, that no good cause would bring him back to me, no apology, no sudden beauty, no folded arms of feigned indifference, no better man or finished book. So I lied. I spun a web of lies. I said an old man had tried to rape me, that everyone there had laughed about it. I said he'd held me down on my knees, that he scraped my cheek with his belt buckle. I wanted to remind him that I was desirable, that I was helpless and I needed his help. At the time, I would rather have suffered his pity than to endure his indifference. He had wished me well once, when we went our separate ways. I imagined he thought it would be painless, or that perhaps with time, my tiny pain would go away. But I sat on the grass in my old home and prayed. I sat praying in empty prayer. When I knew no perfect God would change my face, I was no longer a thing of wonder and grace, that he would never pursue to touch me. I am despicable. I know. God knows. Too. What people don't realize about the boy who cried wolf, apart from his lies and childish behavior, was that he was bored. He used to sit on top of hills and tend to sheep day in and day out, looking down on a village that seemed bustling with activity. Moses, on the other hand, floated in a basket through a river stream, went from slave to prince to rebel and savior, before holding a cane and guarding his sheep, before he learned that the Lord was our shepherd, and that his work was a godly act. It takes time to know grace and to see it as such. But the boy who cried wolf was just that, a boy. And little boys are rightfully restless. He cried wolf, wolf, and all the farmers emerged with their spears, and he laughed at the excitement deprived of him for years. Do not tell lies, the farmer said, and the boy cried wolf in earnest. Or no one will believe you when you tell the truth. And there lied the moral of the story. Not much is said of the boy and his boredom, of how an idle mind is the devil's playground, until you start staring at pencils, scissors, knives, and sharp tools. You read the packages of painkillers, contemplate the dosage. Then your mother tells you the vice president's wife died from an overdose of malaria tablets, that she was overcome with ease, became limp, that she was frightened by her sudden weightlessness, called for help but no one came. And I asked myself the following morning, with stomach cramps from on capsules of painkillers. In all the times I've tried to kill myself, how many times did I want to die? The next thing I'll be reading is from a chapter called Taproots. So this is part 1. I'm trying to make sense of dying. The death of my mother's oldest friend, his death from pancreatic cancer, now the death of a mother of 2 ill-prepared for her passing. They sit in a garage clouded in smoke, surrounded by smoke, drinking, reeking, and I'm summoning all the parts that compose my sobriety. Sometimes dealing with death feels like dying. There was the death of my grandfather, almost a century old. Then the death of a father to a boy crippled in a crash that killed his mother. All these deaths told in the span of a year. The death of an avenue, the death of a path away from this country. I want to illustrate the dark continent with 1,000 hands pulling on a dwindling thread, trying to get out, trying to remember. This land belongs to the ones who saved it. The rest of us dream of being elsewhere. But it is a kind of sickness, isn't it? To be more at ease outside of one's home. I see the symptoms in those that have gone, something in their voice, a slight fixture in their accents. But there is, for those of us who have remained, a certain zealous, a sudden tilt towards the heavens, the churches, the prayer groups, the women in blue robes perched beneath the trees. Heaven is a promise of relocation. It is a scholarship abroad. They are all praying to be elsewhere, and they will worship those with the means to go. But perhaps they pray because the soul and the psyche are the same, because we are as vulnerable to ourselves as we are to malevolent spirits in the air. What took my mind, I wonder? Was it in dealing with death and dying? Was it in trying to love at the cost of my body? Or was it a whisper that pronounced itself in the space between my prayers? The next thing I'll read is from a chapter called Cinder. This is the point from which you heal. Your room emptied of the things you don't wear. You won't miss them, even the things that were rare. Slim your arms down to your tease. Pray in the morning. Make it up. Speak to yourself in consideration. Picture yourself with a bag full of rolls, climbing a mountain, being on your own. You are simple. The life you want is simple. Learn your shoes. Try to rise before sun. Do not fear a broken man. Do not close your eyes to death. At least not before you've embraced that you are black. Black as a mamba. Black as burnt bark. Black as the men you fear in the dark. Do not fear what you are. There is still warmth in a body with scars. Be gentle, daughter, as you would with the spark from sun. In the distance, there is a mother nursing the wounds of her child. She is the image of what you must become to yourself. So this is part 2 of Cinder. You will roll your eyes upon hearing this, but there is something to be said about. You will roll your eyes upon hearing this, but there is something to be said about the artist and his predisposition to pain. There is something to be said of a mind that ignites, that causes one to leap beyond a reasonable point of excitement, that has one tidy up their closet and fold their underwear and write extensive letters repenting, to know what a joy it is to be alive and to bear what follows. The days ahead will be dark and unrelenting. The heart is spent, it has dulled down with the hours, till one finds no point in going on, if going on means every day holding a knife to a vein. They will want to curse this fight, call it a sickness, and reduce your name to the worst you have done. But what exists in you is both the weights of the world and the capacity to lift it. Am I still okay for time? Hello?
Yeah, totally.
I'm still okay? All right. I just have just a few more to read. This is from a chapter called The Red-Tailed Monkey. You want to experience my senses, to ground my work beneath its metaphysical reach, towards something solid, something sown, something rooted in the soil and tangible. But I struggle to frame the texture of grain between my teeth, the pleasure, the scent of wet soil, the light of a setting sun fractured and scattered pieces of broken glass on the grass, on the road, on the way to Grahamstown. I was so caught in the weight of my feelings, in the distance between him and I forgot to tell him it was beautiful, the succulents, the shrubbery, the mild heat and temperate winds. But there are times when I struggle to find my senses, when gravity pulls me below common ground, where I suffer to taste the salt or the seasoning in my food, and I distance myself from what nourishes me. This is the state I was in when he tried to love me. It wasn't the fault of this town. There was no man who tried to rape me. I had no reason. I just broke down. There's another from the Red-Tailed Monkey. It says, I think of you when I am depleted, or when it is warm and I am tired and I fall asleep in the car. When for a time the light touches and I must squint my eyes in order to drive. It is the simple times, the moments of dwindling joy, like my last cup of tea, like a lukewarm hot water bottle, the things which beckon one to sleep or to draw someone closer. It is then that I think of you and your face and your hands and the corner of your forehead, of your veins and your dimples. Sometimes, though, in order to sleep, I think of your smell, of the ways that it repulsed me, of your teeth yellow as corn. I think of your eyes leaking and the shape of your mouth, and I am momentarily convinced that I'm far better now that I'm alone. What hurts, though, is the thought that you are crying, to see you broken while I am powerless to lift you, because I cannot change the thing I've said. It is not enough to tell you once I was beautiful, and the men sent messages in hope, and I turned my head and preserved myself, that I loved you, though nothing I say these days is true, and I'm coming to terms with myself despite you. Sometimes I wish to show you my old home with its many trees. They have been tall competing for the light, and I walk through the shady corridors of the courtyard, and I think of all the rooms where you could paint. If you were here, you would be helping my mother lift the boxes from the ground floor, helping her rearrange her furniture. I would make tea, and the two of you would discuss the current climate, and she would look at me, quite pleased that I should be with you. Lastly, I just want to read two small paragraphs from the body. I have lost the evidence of who I was, and I regard my reflection now with a feeling of wonder. Who is this woman? What does she want? She has the kind of face that wards off any overtures of comfort. She is not a cause for concern. She has let the earth decide for her. She will stay here, rooted in this land. She will not soar. She will not trust. The best of her memories serve as a kind of torment. Another year of her life will offer nothing. She looks strong, the kind of strength we're taught to fear, the one that is hard, the kind that is cautious, the goggle, the woman with locks of serpents, the woman whose abhorrence serves to protect what is sacred. And lastly, number 7, fast. Try to get the venom out. It is crippling half your face. You break out on one cheek and not the other. The lines underneath your eyes are more pronounced on the right than they are on the left. The science from alternative medicine indicates that your heart is broken and you've resorted to overexhausting the right side of your body to compensate for the pain on the left. You've tried everything to subdue the source of your cyclical dysfunction, but you've come to the understanding that at the very best, all there is to do is accept. So you make nice with your father's mistress, who is closer to your age than you're happy to admit. Except that the good man in Spain has adopted a tone of indifference as a consequence of his maturity. And though you require tenderness, it is not guaranteed to you now as it was when you were young. Accept this and assume your feminine form, like the stone cemented stone at the foundation of a retaining wall. The men in your life will alter. They will withhold their passion to unsteady your will. But you know better than anyone that it was their passion that thought each brick was stone. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's some silent and not so silent claps happening. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thanks.
Made it before your power, so that's good. If you're happy to answer some questions, then let's start with that. And if we lose you,
Yeah.
join us back up again. One thing that struck me with your poems is, I don't know, I felt like most of your last lines or endings of whether it was paragraphs or the poems themselves, that those really stuck with me, that you really leave us with a bomb at the end. Is that something you specifically aim for in your work, or does it come naturally to you, or is it my interpretation of it?
No, to be honest, when I was doing my undergrad, my professor, I remember, used to say that to me, but he used to say kind of mockingly, like I had this ringer ending. So I used to try and not do that. So I think for me, it's kind of a habit that I work towards the last line. I tend to write it first, and then everything just kind of working towards it. So.
I think it works.
Thanks.
Anyone else who'd like to ask later a question? Ed.
Hi, Letho.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good. And you? I'm sorry you're just seeing this space, but I don't have the best internet connection, so I didn't get everything, and we might cut out with a question. But I just got the sense of powerful sense of a voice emerging in the extracts that you read, and in the narrator confronting, scrutinizing, painful things, things about her own character, that, someone who's discovering who they are and is what they really think, holding up a mirror to themselves. So, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that although I don't know the book, it sounds like someone who's looking for, there's a quest for an authentic self. So I was wondering how, if that resonates with you, whether you could read a poem like Be Yourself or Selfish. I'm just wondering if there's a conversation there, even what it is to be loved.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I like that you brought up the poem Be Yourself, because I actually even forgot about it completely. I remember when I wrote that, I was grappling with how I think whenever you're in awe of somebody else and you just suppress so many aspects of your personality, and to the point where you even suppress your own boredom with that person. I don't know if that's something experienced. And I think for me, I felt the part of me that is a poet has a hard time silencing my own feelings. I feel like the part of me that makes me write is the part that really can't keep my feelings to myself, that can't hold them in. I don't know how to pretend for an extended period of time. So I think Be Yourself came out of just, finding it really hard to be in awe of someone when that requires you to suppress so much of who you are. And
Right.
Oh, maybe that's the power cutting off there on her side. Give her a minute. Anyone else who'd like to ask a question when Leta comes back, you're welcome to raise your hand or pop your name in the chat or type a question out in the chat if you don't want to speak out loud. I see you there. Just waiting for Lethu to come back into the room.
Okay, she vanished.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think her
she's
power
still
went
in.
off.
Right, okay. I can't tell with these fake backgrounds whether you can see the raised hand or not.
Yeah, I can see your cool library background.
Uh,
That is a serious library background.
yeah, I know. I figure, you know, I need to make myself look erudite for my students. So
There's Lethu.
Hey, I think, yeah, that was a load shedding, so I'm back
That's
now.
great. You're back. Want to finish up what you were saying to Ed's question?
What was I saying? I no, he said something to the effect of my voice was emerging in this one. I think what happened is, when I was writing this book, I felt like I wasn't really trying to sound. I think I just didn't know. I was writing it from such a broken place that I didn't know how to polish myself up. I didn't know how to make myself seem better than what I was. And I think that the poems you mentioned before, I think I was still in a state of mind where I was trying to do that. I think trying to, where it was easier for me to refine my voice and my expression. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Lethu.
Mm.
Then Eliza has a question.
yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the reading. You needn't have been shy. It was really a pleasure listening to you. I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned that you had a change in style, that you were doing something different from what you did before. So I'm just wondering, when you write, how you think about form, how your poetry has changed, and yeah, just the significance of that for you.
I think when I used to write, I used to read a lot of Russian literature and and English literature. I loved, like, Virginia Woolf and Vita Sackville West, and I felt like I was just trying to make my voice sound like that. And I mean, you always are inspired by people in the very beginning, but it was evidence of the fact that I was very distant from who I was. I am not a white middle class English woman. So I think even the fact that I was dreaming in a different color was already evidence of just this being very estranged from yourself. And when I wrote, I think my form changed when I was coming to terms with the fact that my reality was very different from the things that I was fantasizing about. And I was trying to find a way to bridge those differences. And find a way to be myself while doing that. And I realized it wasn't really possible. I was going to change. And that was evidence in the writing style changing as well. I feel like I'm speaking about myself a lot, but I feel that my writing is very attached to the stage that I'm in my life. So it's very difficult for me to talk about it outside of my own experience.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I think, you know, one's writing is an expression of one's inner deepest self. So I don't think we ever need to apologize for that personally. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Douglas. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. I was just going to say that if anyone wants to read a copy of one of Lethu's poems, there is one in number 20, stanzas number 20. So if you've got a copy of that, you can go back to on page 32. Where are we? There we go. Brands of Love. So it's in, if you don't have a copy of number 20 of stanzas, I'll send you a PDF. Just get my email from Melissa and I'll send you a PDF.
I just wanted to ask Ed if, did you want me to read, what's this called? Be Yourself?
If it's readily at hand, that would be great. I just thought there was possibly a conversation there, even though you say that
Yeah.
poem is more refined in terms of, this is the book, perhaps something more raw and more real. Sorry, that doesn't sound quite right, but just picking up on what you were saying,
No, but
would be great to
yeah,
hear the
no,
poem.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have it here.
Great.
Yeah, I think you chose the right poem because this was written very much in that transition period. So, anyways, I'll just read it now. Be yourself. Call it selfish if you must, but I believe that every choice must bring you closer to yourself. If it only strains you and brings you no laughter, it is not who you are. It is not how you should be walking. If it alters your voice and weakens your posture, it is not who you are. It is not how you should be walking. If you must squint your eyes and scrape the depths of your mind to meet the minds of those unlike your own, know that it is not who you are. It is not how you should be walking. In all my accounts of love and rejection, I've learned that it is better to be yourself. And don't apologize, mostly because you really have no choice in the matter. You are going to do it anyways, and if it's not on purpose, it will be by mistake. Such a shame to make yourself a mistake. And when you apologize for it, you will always apologize because you will always do it. And it will be so sad and so boring, and nobody will care. It will be all for nothing. And worse, it will be all your fault. You'll blame yourself for being yourself. You'll hate yourself because you can't help it. It is who you are. It is. I'm actually really happy you made me read that.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Thank you. Has anyone else got a question? Ed and Shark. Shark, want to ask something?
I'm sort of reformulating because between them, Ed and Lisa asked the question I thought that I wanted to ask, but I'm walking towards it again. Thank you so much. That was a gorgeous reading. Thank you so much for it.
Thank you.
So I'm also curious about the new voice and whether you noticed it by writing, whether you noticed it through a discomfort with what you had written before, and how you spoke to that voice and how you interrogated that voice. Or if you like, I'm also very curious about this wonderful, strong sense of being oneself, which I get from the poem you just read, which I love, and this wonderful thing that you do of writing from what seem to be other perspectives. So I don't know, anything there that you'd like to respond to would be great.
There's so many questions there. I'm trying to decide which one to focus on. Maybe I'll just focus on the new voice. It's hard, I actually wanted to go back to what Ed was saying because I don't think it's that I was writing. I was wrong when I was saying that I was writing from a more refined space and that this is more raw and honest. I think what I meant was that I was much younger and I had much more of an idea of how I wanted to sound. And I think as I grew up, I just wasn't that, it was hard for me to keep up a certain pretense. It felt like I wasn't turning into the person that I was trying to be. And I had no control of how I was turning out. I think when I wrote this book in particular, I wrote it when I was in a very, very bad place. I was in a place of transition. I've lived a lot of my life in different countries, and I think I was coming home and settling home for the first time, and I had a hard time adjusting to that transition. Also, it was the first time I was in the middle of my master's program, so I had to write it, and it's the first time I was writing something while I was going through it. Usually I write things in reflection. So I think what changed was that I was so torn up. I just didn't have the energy to put up any kind of pretense about what I was feeling and what I was thinking. And that voice changed. And I think why I call it a change is because once you reveal a certain aspect of yourself, it's really hard to suddenly go back and put on a certain, like now I write like this. It's just, it's out there, it's there. So I have to just embrace that new person. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but I think it just changed because I grew up, basically. I wasn't a child anymore, and I couldn't be even if I wanted to be. And so my voice changed with my age. Yeah.
I think that's a really inspiring answer. I'm going to sit and feel into that answer for a long time. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, these answers are really thought-provoking, and it's really nice to hear you articulate these things. I'm curious with your new book. You called it a novella. I hope we haven't lost you. You might have. Are you still here? Yeah.
The internet still. I'm still here.
Okay. All right. Well, I
There's
hope
no
you're kind of breaking up from what I can hear. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's on my side. Anyway, so I'm curious with the novella form. I'm not very familiar with it as a category. My understanding of it is that it's a short novel, but I don't know if that's right. So I'm wondering how autobiographical is it as a writing form. My experience of poetry is that it's generally quite autobiographical, but not everyone necessarily writes like that. So I'm wondering how this writing was for you in that sense. And I don't know if you heard any of that. Can't hear you.
Okay. Hello?
There we go.
Sorry, did you say something?
Did you hear anything of my question? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, were you asking if it was autobiographical or not?
Yeah, basically.
Hello? Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Your picture's frozen.
I did. You were asking me how autobiographical the work was, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think it's just lagging, but I can hear you. It just takes a long time for what I'm saying to reach. The book was, I would say a lot of it was autobiographical, but some of it was more true to the way I felt. I think I was just trying to, about my character, just lying about the fact that she's been sexually assaulted. And in a time where people go through this a lot, like people are being raped, especially in Rose, there was a huge scandal with that. So I feel like someone lying about that under those circumstances is quite controversial. But even though, you know, my character hadn't been sexually assaulted, she felt like a mental assault. She felt really, you know, like she was ruptured and broken inside and didn't know how to make the people that she was communicating understand how she felt unless she gave them a physical experience. Like, it was like saying what I'm feeling right now is equivalent to what someone might be feeling if they were sexually violated. And so as much as it's a lie, it's also someone is living in a society that does not comprehend certain inner conflict. And I don't know, for me, what I experience a lot in Black communities is we are able to talk about our political affliction, but it's very hard for us to talk about our personal afflictions. And then, so it's like living in a community where you can't express that I'm depressed because it doesn't make sense to anybody. And so you create a physical incident that would give someone an understanding of what you must be feeling. And so I felt in that spirit, the book was written in that way. So much, not every incident is real. It's put there to give you an emphasis of what that person is feeling. It's true to what I felt, but not always what I'm saying. I think Jacques
that makes sense.
his hand up. All right.
Thank you for that answer. You seem to be frozen again, but I could hear you fine. Does anyone else want to ask something? Ed?
Hi, just something more practical. When is the book coming out, and where can people get it?
So the book is but pre-orders are available in November, and all the information is on Bepo's website. So them deciding when they're ready to release it. So yeah, the book is what I'm told, and all the information is on the website, and I can share that with you.
Thank you.
If you have any other social media or anything where people can follow you, you're welcome to also share that in the chat.
Oh, okay. I have a Twitter, but I don't have any other social media. And I tried to look for Red Wheelbarrow on Twitter, but like there are 4 of them. I don't know which one is you guys.
We're not on Twitter yet. We're only on Facebook so
do you
far.
have 4 different Twitter accounts or?
Okay, well, I think for the sake of time, we'll wrap up the Q&A there. Thank you so much for all your honest answers and thorough answers as well. They've been really, really interesting to listen to, and your reading was amazing as well. We all enjoyed it. So thank you for being here with us. And yeah, we look forward to reading your book. And for those of you who'd like to stay and share the open mic,
Thanks.
I can't hear you, Lethu.
Oh, hello? Can you
Yep.
hear me? Hello? Oh, you couldn't hear me. I said thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure. It was a year in the making.
It's been awesome having you. I hope you'll read for us again next year. We're going to take a 5-minute break, so it's 8:22 on my clock, so we'll meet back here at about 7:27 for the open mic.